"That machine," Kyle Mathers said, loud enough that the two men behind him could hear it, "is worth less than the debt you owe us." He was looking at the tractor, a 1974 Oliver 1855 diesel, faded red, parked where it had always been parked, against the east fence, 30 feet from the main barn. It had planted 41 consecutive spring seasons. It had never once failed to start. Raymond Calloway said nothing. Kyle Mathers smiled. He had the kind of smile that appears on faces accustomed to winning before the conversation begins. He was 31 years old. He had been district portfolio manager for Heartland Central Credit Union for 14 months. He had an MBA from Ohio State. He had never worked a day of physical labor in his life. He adjusted his cufflinks and looked back at his papers. "We'll be in touch," he said, and got back into the white SUV. Raymond Calloway watched the vehicle pull out of his gravel driveway and turn south toward the county road. He stood there until the dust settled. Then he walked back to his barn. He had $214,000 in documented equity in this land. He had never missed a payment in 38 years. He had a folder on his kitchen table that said so. Here is what happened. Raymond Dean Calloway was 71 years old the morning Kyle Mathers stood in his driveway and looked at his tractor the way a man looks at something that no longer belongs to anyone worth knowing. He had been on this land since 1984, not on family land, not on inherited land, his own. Every acre purchased with money he had earned himself, beginning at age 22 when he drove a grain truck for 3 different farmers in Mercer County, Ohio, for $4.30 an hour. He had no head start. His father worked the line at a plant in Lima that made heat exchangers for industrial boilers. His father rented an apartment. His father died at 63 with $4,200 in a checking account and no land, no house, nothing to leave. Raymond had watched that happen. He had decided, at an age young enough that the decision still had time to mean something, that it would not happen to him. He saved for 6 years before he could afford the down payment on the first parcel. 41 acres, southeastern Mercer County, $72,000 in 1984. He paid $8,000 down. He borrowed the rest. He worked the land himself and drove a grain truck on other men's farms to cover the note. He bought a second parcel in 1991. He bought a third in 1997. By 2003, he had assembled 218 acres in 3 contiguous parcels. He had done it without a partner, without an inheritance, and without a single loan default. There was a creek on the south end, gravel bed maybe 3 feet deep in wet years, barely ankle height in dry ones. A line of cottonwoods along the east bank that turned gold in October. The barn was original to the property, built in 1948, white, 2 stories, the upper loft still used for hay storage. He had replaced the roof himself in 2001. His wife, Dorothy Ann Calloway, had kept the books. That was how they had divided it. Raymond worked the ground, Dorothy kept the records. She had a system, 12 metal boxes, 1 per decade, split across 2 shelf units in the basement, organized by year, subdivided by category. Payment confirmations, correspondence, insurance certificates, tax records, appraisals, everything labeled in her handwriting. Careful, small, even letters in blue ballpoint pen. She had started the system in 1984, and she had never stopped adding to it. Dorothy died on March 14, 2019, of a cerebral hemorrhage. She was 68 years old. 3 weeks before she died, she had told Raymond something he had not fully understood at the time. "Don't let anyone touch the boxes," she said. "If there's ever a question about anything, the boxes have the answer." Raymond had nodded. He thought she was talking about the tax records. He did not know she was right about something else entirely. Kyle Andrew Mathers was 31 years old. MBA, Ohio State, 2017. He had been with Heartland Central Credit Union for 3 years, the last 14 months as District Portfolio Manager for the Agricultural Lending Division's Rural Recovery Unit. The Rural Recovery Unit was not what its name suggested. It was not a service, it was a revenue mechanism. Its function was to identify underperforming collateral relationships, mortgages where the borrower's equity exceeded the bank's exposure, and renegotiate the terms in the bank's favor. The official language was portfolio optimization. The practical function was find older borrowers with real equity and find a reason to reclassify their loan status. Kyle Mathers had a spreadsheet. It was organized by borrower age, loan origination date, and current collateral value. Raymond Calloway appeared in column B, row 47, sorted by the metric Mathers used internally as extraction potential. Raymond's extraction potential was listed at $214,000. Kyle Mathers had spent 11 minutes reviewing Raymond Calloway's file before classifying his account for the Rural Recovery Program. 11 minutes to compress 38 years of payments into a risk reclassification. The basis was a clause in the 1997 Loan Modification Agreement, a clause regarding maintenance requirements for collateral property that Mathers's team believed had not been satisfied. Raymond Calloway was not the first. There had been 22 others before him in the same district portfolio. 14 of them had accepted renegotiated terms. 4 had walked away. 3 had hired attorneys and settled quietly. 1 case was still pending. Raymond Calloway made 23. The letter arrived on a Tuesday in February of 2022. Official letterhead: Heartland Central Credit Union, Agricultural Lending Division, Rural Recovery Unit. 3 pages, dense. The claim summarized. Calloway's 1997 loan modification had included a property maintenance rider. A site inspection the previous November had identified 3 specific deficiencies. Under the terms of the rider, those deficiencies constituted a material breach. The bank was reclassifying the account to non-performing status and adjusting the interest rate accordingly, effective 60 days from the date of the letter. The adjusted interest rate was 11.4%. The original rate had been 4.7%. Raymond read the letter at his kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. He read it once. He put it down. He looked out the window at the barn. He picked it up and read it again, more slowly. Then he called a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Carol Heist. She worked out of Salina, Ohio, 23 miles from Raymond's farm. She'd been practicing agricultural and rural property law for 17 years. She listened to Raymond describe the letter over the phone. She told him to bring her the original loan documents, the modification agreement from 1997, and any payment records he had. He brought Dorothy's boxes, all 12 of them. The boxes were in the basement. 2 wire shelving units, 6 boxes per unit, organized left to right, top to bottom, 1984 through 2021. The lids were labeled in Dorothy's handwriting. Each label included the year range and a short descriptor. 1984 to 1987, origination, payments, insurance. 1997 to 2000, modification, property records, tax. The labels were faded at the edges. The handwriting was still precise. Raymond had not opened most of them in 3 years. He stood in the basement for a long moment before he started carrying them upstairs. The latch on the 1997 to 2000 box was stiff. He opened it on the kitchen table. Dorothy had kept everything. The original modification agreement, all 31 pages, with a paperclip on page 7, the section containing the maintenance rider. She had annotated it in pencil, a small question mark beside paragraph 4B. A note in the margin. Check this against insurance cert, December 1997. The insurance certificate was in the same box, behind a labeled tab that said Insurance 1997. It showed comprehensive coverage for all 3 parcels, including the specific structures cited in the bank's current complaint. Dorothy had highlighted 4 lines on that insurance certificate. She had done it sometime in 1997 or 1998. The highlighter had faded to pale yellow, but the lines were still legible. She had known. She had not known what she was protecting against. She had only known it might matter someday. Carol Heist opened the boxes on the conference table in her office in Salina on a Thursday afternoon in March 2022. She went through them methodically. She did not say much for the first hour. She set items aside in a separate pile. The pile grew. At 4:17 in the afternoon, she found it. The bank's own internal site inspection report from November 2021, obtained later in discovery, had listed 3 deficiencies in Raymond's property. But the bank's own maintenance standard, as defined in the 1997 modification rider, paragraph 4B, subclause 2, referenced a specific Ohio Agricultural Property Code, OAC 901-5-11-04. That code had been revised in 2009. The revision had changed the compliance thresholds for structural maintenance on agricultural outbuildings. The bank had cited the pre-revision standard, the one from 1997, the one that no longer existed. The deficiencies they had identified were not deficiencies under the current standard. Under current Ohio Code, Raymond Callaway's property was in full compliance, had been in full compliance since 2009. Dorothy's paperclip on page 7 had led Heist directly to paragraph 4B. The question mark in Dorothy's pencil annotation had been asking the right question for 25 years. Carol Heist set the document down. "Mr. Callaway," she said, "I need you to tell me everything that happened when the bank's representative visited your property." Raymond told her about the white SUV, about the 2 men, about the tractor, about what Kyle Mathers had said and who had been standing close enough to hear it. Heist wrote something down. She was quiet for a moment. "How many witnesses were present?" she asked. 2, Raymond said. "His own men." She wrote something else. The case was filed in Mercer County Common Pleas Court in June 2022, Callaway v. Heartland Central Credit Union. The complaint alleged wrongful loan reclassification, breach of good faith, and damages under Ohio's consumer protection statutes. It also alleged tortious interference with Raymond's farming operations. The reclassification had caused a secondary lender to delay a $180,000 equipment line Raymond had been approved for, costing him 1 full planting season on 2 of his 3 parcels. Heartland Central retained outside counsel, a firm from Columbus, 2 attorneys assigned to the case. They filed a 47-page response. They argued the maintenance rider's language was unambiguous. They argued their inspection had been conducted in good faith. They argued the 2009 code revision did not retroactively alter the contractual standard established in 1997. The trial was scheduled for February 2023. The judge was the Honorable Diane Merrick. She had served on the Mercer County bench for 22 years. She had grown up in a farm family in Darke County, 1 county east. She had seen agricultural lending disputes for 2 decades. She had read both case files the night before trial. The courtroom was on the 2nd floor of the Mercer County Courthouse in Salina. Small room, wood-paneled walls, an American flag in the corner behind the bench. The heat was uneven, warm near the radiators, cold near the tall windows. The room was quiet. Heartland Central's attorneys arrived first, 2 of them both young, both in dark suits, both carrying matching black leather folders. Kyle Mathers was present as a witness, seated behind the bar in a pressed charcoal suit. He looked comfortable. Raymond Callaway arrived with Carol Heist. He wore a clean white shirt and a blue tie his wife had given him for their 35th anniversary. He had polished his work boots for the trip. He sat down and did not look at Kyle Mathers. Judge Merrick entered exactly on time. The bank's lead attorney spoke for 22 minutes. He was polished. He was methodical. He walked through the 1997 modification language line by line. He presented the November 2021 inspection report. He argued that the plain language of paragraph 4B controlled the dispute, and that subsequent regulatory changes could not retroactively alter a private contractual standard. He used the phrase contractually established baseline 7 times. He was, in stretches, almost convincing. Carol Heist responded in 2 sentences. The maintenance standard in paragraph 4B, subclause 2, incorporates OAC 901:5-11-04 by reference. That code was amended in 2009, and the bank has cited the superseded version. She placed a single document on the plaintiff's table. Ohio Administrative Code 901:5-11-04, current version, printed that morning, with the 2009 amendment date on the cover page. She set it down without elaboration. Judge Merrick looked at the bank's attorney. He said, "Your Honor, the contractual language specifies the 1997 standard." She held up one hand. She picked up Carol Heist's document. She read it. The room was silent. No one moved. Kyle Mathers, behind the bar, shifted once in his seat. Then he was still. Judge Merrick looked up. "Counsel," she said, looking at the bank's attorney, "can you show me where in paragraph 4B the 1997 version of the code is specified, as opposed to the code itself?" He opened his folder. He found the page. He read it. He read it again. He said nothing. The courtroom was quiet for a long time. Judge Merrick delivered her ruling from the bench. The Maintenance Rider Incorporated OAC 901 verses 5-11-04 as a living reference, not a fixed historical standard. The bank's reclassification had been based on a superseded regulatory threshold. The reclassification was invalid. The account was to be restored to its original terms immediately. On the secondary claim, tortious interference with Raymond's farming operations, Judge Merrick found that the bank's conduct had caused direct, documented damages totaling $340,000 in lost planting season revenue. On the consumer protection claim, the court found that the bank's pattern of conduct across the rural recovery portfolio, 23 cases in the same district, all targeting borrowers over the age of 65, all citing the same superseded code provision, constituted a systematic violation of Ohio's Consumer Sales Practices Act. Total damages, $6,500,000. Distributed among all affected borrowers in the portfolio based on documented losses. Raymond Calloway's share was $812,000. The number was read into the record plainly. Judge Merrick did not raise her voice. The court reporter's fingers moved across the keys. Kyle Mathers's face did not change. He was very still. The drive home took 23 minutes. Raymond drove alone. He did not turn on the radio. He parked in his gravel driveway in the same spot where the white SUV had sat. He sat in the truck for a while. The tractor was against the east fence where it had always been. The barn was behind him. He walked to the south end of the property, past the barn and past the creek, to the line of cottonwoods along the east bank. There was a flat stone there, marked with a simple bronze plate. It was the kind of marker a man installs himself on a winter afternoon alone because he knows exactly where something should be. He stood at the stone for a long time. The cottonwoods were bare. The creek was low. His breath made small clouds in the cold air. He said, "You knew." 2 words. Quiet. He stood there a while longer. Then he turned and walked back toward the barn. The 1997 metal box was still on his kitchen table. He would take it back downstairs tomorrow. He would put it on its shelf between the 1994 to 1996 box and the 2001 to 2003 box, exactly where Dorothy had always kept it. Some people walk away from what they built the moment someone tells them they should. Others have a different kind of patience, the kind that comes from knowing, precisely and without doubt, what something is worth. Raymond Calloway had spent 38 years documenting every dollar, every payment, every piece of paper. Not because he expected trouble, because Dorothy had taught him that the record was the thing. The record was what lasted. She was right. Tell me in the comments, if the bank had offered Raymond $400,000 to walk away quietly before trial, would you have taken the deal or waited for the courtroom? That is not a simple question. I'll read every answer. Next time, a 74-year-old widow in Clay County, Missouri, received a letter claiming her family's creek gave a development company a legal right to cross her land. The letter was dated 47 days after her husband died. What her husband had buried in his workshop told a different story. Subscribe so you don't miss it. We'll see you there. Paste your script.